Albert Breer joining us live, Monday Morning Quarterback. All right, Jerod Mayo gets hired. Are you surprised, Albert, by that move?
No, I'm not. Maybe a little bit by how fast it happened, but this is something the Crafts have had in mind for years now. Not days, not weeks, not months, years. They really grew an affinity for Jerod Mayo when he was a player. When he got out of football in 2015, he went into finance, and Robert Kraft helped him there. And when he came back into coaching, they quickly identified him as somebody who would be worthy of succeeding Bill Belichick. So I'm not surprised it happened. And all of this is one reason why it was so important for them to hold on to him last year. In fact, he had a chance to interview for the Panthers job. And as you know, Colin, it can help guys just to go and interview well, because owners talk to owners. And if you do well, then it's going to get around. And to keep him off the market, they revised his deal. And the provision that he'd become the next head coach was part of that deal that was signed a year ago. And now, obviously, that's come to pass. So not a great year, obviously, in 2023 for the franchise. But again, this belief that the Crafts have in Jerod Mayo has nothing to do with a single year. It's something that's been built up over the last 15 years.
What's the market for Bill Belichick, in your opinion, Albert?
I think there's a lot of curiosity. I think there are some teams that still have coaches in place that would like to sniff around a little bit.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't think Bill is guessing on what's going to be out there for him. And I think the opportunity in Atlanta is probably the best one right now, as it stands right now. There's an owner, obviously, there who's been in place for a long time. And a guy in Arthur Blank who hasn't really hired a sure thing before. He's hired 5 coaches. 4 of them were assistants: Jim Mora, Mike Smith, Dan Quinn, and Arthur Smith. And then he hired a college coach in Bobby Petrino. So he hasn't taken this sort of big swing ever before. He's 81 years old. He's got a roster that's ready to win right now. And he can offer Bill a chance to remake the organization in his own image. And I think Bill, for his part, would bring an all-star staff with him. I think he'd bring a lot of former head coaches, maybe guys like Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, to try to take another swing at a championship, and, of course, Don Shula's record. And I also think that Bill would rather stay east than go west, where most of his life has been.
Sure.
And so I think everything lines up for him to be the next coach of the Falcons. But again, there are some teams that have coaches in place now that I think could be factors in the coming days.
Pete Carroll leaves Seattle. I don't know if it's shocking. They underachieved. The defense has been bad for 5 years. Total defense, worst in the league, and he's a defensive coach. You talk to players. You talk to people inside the building. What was the vibe on Pete?
The players still like him. I think there's still a positive atmosphere there. I mean, you've been there, Colin. It's a really unique environment that Pete's been able to build. Both at USC and with the Seahawks. I just think this for the owner was time. And 2 years ago, she really considered moving on from Pete Carroll and turning the page. And that, of course, was when they moved on from Russell Wilson. And she stuck with it. Then they made the playoffs last year. But I always feel like when an owner opens the door for something like this, it's never fully shut again. And, I think that's sort of what happened here, where she got it in her head a couple of years ago, okay, I think I'm ready to turn the page. And then, of course, they bounced back in a big way and had a couple really good draft classes in a row. And, okay, here we go. And then they don't make the playoffs this year, and that old idea comes back. So I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. But I think at the top of the list, it's just the owner having it in her head that she wanted to turn the page. And by the way, I think Pete's leaving an outstanding situation for someone there.
Yeah.
It might wind up being Dan Quinn. We'll see. But whoever inherits that situation, there's a lot of good young talent. They really knocked it out of the park the last couple of years in the draft.
Jim Harbaugh, what are you hearing? I mean, he's going to have his pick, it should be. Are you hearing he's leaning NFL? And if is there a spot, destiny you think he'll land in?
I think again, if the right opportunity is there for him, the time is now. The NCAA sanctions could be coming down. He's got 44 seniors. He just won a national title. He's done everything he set out to do at Michigan, and he's got unfinished business in the NFL. So I think the time is now. I think the right place is the Chargers. We've talked about this, Colin. The Chargers do have, sensitivity to the perception that they're cheap or that they're irrelevant in LA, and hiring Harbaugh would address both of those things. And going to Los Angeles for Harbaugh geographically, it makes sense. He's coached and played in California. He likes it out there. You got the quarterback in place in Justin Herbert and a roster that's ready to win right now. And just an interesting little nugget here for you if you want it. Yesterday, they interviewed the Giants assistant general manager, Brandon Brown, who's very well regarded. He's a guy who not only has great scouting history, but also has a law degree. He's got a relationship with Harbaugh. So that's one I would keep an eye on, potentially pairing a GM with Harbaugh as the head coach.
Finally, Steelers-Bills. I saw a weather forecast this morning. It's Armageddon. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you can
65 miles an hour, is that right?
I don't know how you can see the game if you're a broadcaster. I don't know if you see it. So is there any talk about moving it?
I actually checked in with the league less than an hour ago, and they said to this point there's been no discussion about moving either the Chiefs-Dolphins game, which I don't think that one to get moved. That sounds like it's just cold, or the Bills-Steelers game. Now, they still have some time because that Bills-Steelers game is on Sunday and not Saturday. And generally what this comes down to, it's not whether or not you can get the players in there, the coaches in there. It's safety for the fans, and so I think that's probably what dictates this one. If it becomes an unsafe thing for fans to go to the game, then maybe they move it. But they've been pretty reluctant in the past to move playoff games. So I think that's why they haven't really discussed it in earnest yet. And I think it would take the forecast getting even worse for them to do that.
Let me throw this out there. Vrabel's obviously a great candidate. If Harbaugh gobbled up the Chargers job, I think the Washington job's the second best one in the market. Is that where Vrabel would lean? I mean, what are you hearing?
Well, that's sort of interesting because the new head of football operations there is a guy named Adam Peters, right?
Yeah.
Who was with Vrabel in New England. And so I think, AP would at least kick the tires on Mike Vrabel and gauge his interest a bit. I think that there would be a good match there. I would also keep an eye on Vegas with Vrabel. Tom Brady was at practice on Friday, their final practice of the regular season. And it was the first time Brady had been at the Raiders facility since before Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler were fired. Brady also, of course, is looking at buying a piece of the team. That still needs to be approved by the league, but he's certainly got Mark Davis's ear. So if Brady is involved in this coaching search, you know who he's very close with.
Yeah.
The guy he played 8 years together with in New England. And so Brady's involvement there could help them with Harbaugh if they want to make, another run at Harbaugh because there's the Michigan connection. But I think Brady's connection to Vrabel is even stronger. And the Raiders could offer Vrabel the opportunity to set up the entire operation in his own image, which was sort of what he was looking to do in Tennessee. So I think the Commanders do make some sense for Vrabel, but I think the Raiders do too, Colin.
Good stuff. Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback. That's exciting stuff. Albert, great seeing you on a Friday.
All right. Thanks, Colin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.